All right, forget those rigid formations you always see on TV. Today, we're going to dive into something different, a kind of hidden tactical language that the world's best teams are using. We're going to break down what are called the four relationist archetypes.
So let me ask you a question. When you think about football tactics, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's probably a whiteboard, right? You got your X's and O's, maybe a classic 4-4-2 formation. But what if that's only half the story? What if the real secret, the real organizing principle of a team, isn't about where players stand, but about how they connect with each other?
Well, that very question leads us to a whole different philosophy. Think of it like a hidden language that teams speak on the pitch. It's an approach that values player instinct way more than just following rigid instructions, and it has a name: relationist football.
And here's the absolute core of it. The big idea is that a team structure, it isn't some pre-drawn map that the coach hands out. No. Instead, it's this living, breathing thing that emerges right there in real time from the connections, the little chats, and the pure instincts between the players on the field.
And look, this isn't just some abstract theory somebody cooked up. The archetypes we're about to unpack, they're based on huge data analysis. We're talking over 800 matches from Europe's top 5 leagues. So what we're looking at here is backed by some serious evidence.
Okay, so relationism isn't just one single style. You can think of it as having 4 distinct flavors. So let's get into it and meet them. All right, here they are. Now, to get a handle on these, just imagine a spectrum. On one end, you've got the coach's structure, and on the other end, you've got the player's will or instinct. The 4 archetypes we see here, SW, WS, WN, and NW, are really just labels for 4 unique ways of blending those 2 forces. So let's kick things off with the 2 systems that are most driven by the players themselves.
Okay, our first pair, SW and WS. These 2 are all about a distributed collective intelligence. You can really think of them as the most bottom-up styles of play. They're driven first and foremost by the players out on the pitch. So first up, we've got SBW, which is called the peer-to-peer network. And this is pretty much the purest form of relationalism you can get. It's flat, which means there isn't one single superstar calling all the shots. It is deeply, deeply collective. Honestly, for fans, watching a team like this is kind of like watching a jazz band. It's all about improvisation and that undeniable chemistry.
The poster child for this is that incredible 2019 Ajax team. I mean, their shape on the field just emerged purely from how well the players connected with each other. And you can actually measure this. There's a metric called network entropy. And don't worry, it's just a fancy way of saying we're measuring how evenly the ball gets passed around the entire team. And this chart just illustrates the point perfectly. You take a classic SW team like Verona, and they have a really high network entropy score. Now, compare that to a typical positional team. It's a big difference, right? This data is telling us that the ball is moving through everyone, not just getting funneled to a couple of star playmakers. In this system, the whole team is the playmaker.
All right, next up we have WS, known as the pressing cloud. So what this archetype does is it takes that collective spirit from the peer-to-peer network and injects it with this chaotic, super intense energy. It's all about one thing: how the team reacts instinctively the second they lose the ball.
And the textbook example here, of course, is Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool, their famous gegenpressing. It isn't triggered because the ball enters a certain zone on a map. Nope. It's a shared instinct. It's a feeling that tells them to immediately swarm the opposition. This creates total chaos for the other team, and there's a key metric that shows exactly how much they benefit from it.
So, check this out. Liverpool had the highest rotational quality score in the entire study. Now, what does that mean? It basically measures how much of an advantage a team gets when players swap positions. A high score, like Liverpool's, means their spontaneous, on-the-fly rotations create way more dangerous attacks, and it works precisely because it's instinctive, not something they planned out on a chalkboard. So, just to quickly recap this first pair, SW is that pure, flat, peer-to-peer collective vibe. Then you have WS, which takes that same foundation and injects a massive dose of coach-driven intensity, basically turning that collective play into a weaponized pressing machine. All right, let's shift gears and look at our second pair. With these 2, WN and NW, we start to see the coach's influence and a sense of hierarchy come more into play. But, and this is the key part, they do it in very, very different ways. So let's start with WN, the loose hierarchy.
This style is all about one thing, creating a framework that just unleashes the individual brilliance of your top players. It's about trusting those players to solve problems together, on the fly, using their chemistry.
I mean, just think about Ancelotti's Real Madrid. You've got players like Vinicius Jr. and Bellingham. They aren't being handed a rigid set of instructions. They're operating with a ton of freedom, just within these broad limits set by the coach. This creates what's called a high cognitive load, which really just means the players are constantly reading the game and making complex decisions for themselves, not just following some script. And that brings us to our final archetype, NW, the fluid structure. Now, at first glance, this one might look like the most traditional, coach-driven system of them all. But you gotta look closer. Because while the defensive shape is super rigid, the attacking play is pure, unadulterated relationism.
Thomas Tuchel's Chelsea is the perfect case study here. Their defensive shape, which was designed from the top down by the coach, was absolutely non-negotiable. Period. But the moment they won the ball back, the attackers were suddenly free to connect, to combine, and to create, all based on their relationships in that split second.
And this number right here is fascinating. Chelsea had the lowest hybridity deviation in the entire study. All this metric does is measure how much players wander from their assigned defensive positions. So Chelsea's super low score shows an extreme level of discipline. They maintain that rock-solid defensive base. And that base is the very platform that allows their attackers to go and play with so much freedom. Okay, so what's the real difference between these two hierarchical models? It's simple, really. In W1, freedom is the rule, and the coach just sets up the guardrails. But in NW, structure is the rule, and the coach builds this non-negotiable defensive base that freedom can then spring from. Okay, so we've met all 4 archetypes, but the big question is, how do you actually apply this? How can you spot your favorite team's true instinct, regardless of what the formation says on the TV screen?
All right, here's a quick little diagnostic test for you. Next time you're watching your team play, just ask yourself these 5 questions. Are your players constantly drifting out of their assigned zones to go help a teammate? Do the best goals seem to come from these unscripted, improvised moments of magic? Is the press being triggered by the players on the field, not by a coach's shout? And here's the kicker. If you find yourself answering yes to 3 or more of those questions, then it doesn't matter what formation is listed on paper. The soul of your team, its instinct, is relationist. And that's a really powerful insight, whether you're a fan or a coach. Okay, last thing. Let's make this super practical. If you're a coach and you're sitting there recognizing your own team in one of these archetypes, what should you be focusing on? Well, here is a quick, rapid-fire playbook.
If you're an SW team, your small-sided games are everything. That is where those crucial relationships get built. If you're a WS team, you have to drill that gegenpress trigger over and over until it's pure instinct. For a WN team, you have to be crystal clear about the parameters of freedom for your star players. And if you're an NW team, that defensive identity is sacred. You defend it first, no matter what. So really, the big takeaway here is this. When you start looking for relationships, not just positions, it opens up a whole new way of seeing the beautiful game. The next time you sit down to watch a match, don't just look at the 4-4-2 on the screen. Look for the connections between the players. Now that you know the archetypes, which one are you going to see this weekend?